7 o'clock. Hello there. And we have a quorum, so we're good. The first thing on the agenda tonight is the reserve fund transfer from the DPW, looking for $45,000 for an engine replacement in one of their snow removal vehicles. So if you want to
Sure.
walk through.
So I know you have some of the paperwork, but I'll just describe it. So this is what we call our H10. It's a 6-wheel dump truck. It's an international truck. It's 14, it has it on here, 14 and 10 months, so 15 years old. It's got almost 60,000 miles on it. It's a vehicle that we use throughout the year, but you know, mainly just like a lot of our 6-wheelers, they are for our snow removal, for our salting and spreading operations, and then also our plowing operations. So this truck was out a week ago when we got the storm last Thursday, and promptly, not too far into the storm, I got a call from the driver, and he said, this is not sounding good, I got to come back in. And I kept on waiting for him to come back in, and he came in about 5 miles an hour, puffing it along with a very loud noise coming from the engine. And we were like, yeah, that's not good. So we had it towed to Alliance, who is the area rep for International, that has the repair shop. They took it apart, and they found that, yes, indeed, there was major issues in the engine. And don't ask me what they are, because although I understand that it was an engine and that basically part of the shaft blew, I'm not the technical person when it comes to the engines and everything. They talk at me, the mechanics, and I go, yeah, okay, the engine's in trouble. And I say, yep. So I said, well, we need to start looking into our options and what we can do. So he immediately, the mechanic there was basically under the impression that replacing the engine is the best way to go, given that it's 15 years old. And that even if, you know, we did repair it, he was also concerned with the cost of repair, because basically you're only looking at half the engineer if you're doing the repair, you're not doing all the other parts. When you get a replacement engine like this, it comes with a better warranty when it's done right there in their shop. Mechanic actually wrote down a couple of things. He goes, it also will come with 2-year warranty on the engine, 1-year warranty on the injectors. It comes with a new turbo, which the truck has never had replaced before. So a turbo is basically part of the engine, just like a turbo in your car. It supercharges it. It's not really supercharging it here. It's just giving it a little extra power so that it's not operating at very painfully slow speeds, which these trucks kind of do operate anyways. So we did, after having some questions, get a quote on what it would cost to repair it as opposed to replace it. That was $50,760.46. It's only 1 year on the parts and labor for the warranty, as opposed to the 2-year warranty. And actually, one of the reasons why and I will say we hemmed and hawed, because it is a 15-year-old truck, and what are we doing? But as I can say, as ordering parts, trucks last July, right after we got our appropriations, my trucks aren't anywhere close to be coming in. So if you order a truck, and we've talked to different manufacturers and we started speaking to them, if we ordered a truck today, we would be lucky to get the cab and chassis within a year. And that would be lucky. Some of them tell me that it's more like 1.5 years. And from there, the truck has to go to the upfitter, and the upfitter is another year out. So, yes. And this is just the reality that we're kind of living in now. There aren't trucks just available on the lots. What he did say to us, he goes, oh, I do have some really nice used trucks. And we went, okay, that's really nice. I'd love to be able to buy a 2016 used truck with relatively low miles on it at a nice price. Yeah. From a procurement standpoint, we would never be able to get them, because those trucks, although they might have been there last week, they're probably not there this week. It's not something that's readily available, and they're still at the price point where I have to do procurement, which means I'd have to go out for a public bid on them. And as soon as you do that, they're not going to be sitting there anymore. So as much as I'd like to think some of those are options, being without a truck to fight snow, and knowing that this isn't our only truck this is one of our older trucks, I will say that, but we have another truck that was already having issues right after the storm, that's 11 years old. We can't afford to go down 2 trucks. So one of the first questions we were asking was, so if we have it repaired, if we have the engine put in, how quickly can you get it back to us? And he said 2 weeks. I said, okay, 2 weeks makes it worth it. That means I have it back in this season, and I don't want any more snow, trust me. But if you guys follow any of the weather, they think it's going to turn back. We're going to have a couple 2 weeks of good weather, and then it's going to get snowy again.
Did you look into a lease?
So,
It's got 60,000 miles, 15 years. You put on 4,000 miles a
So
year.
leasing for large vehicles and is an interesting, I don't know how we do it from a procurement standpoint. When we purchase most of these vehicles, they're off of a state contract or another cooperative contract. So we don't have to go out and get our own, they're already a price list basically, and we're just, can you give us what your bid prices were? And we're covered under that contract. And they go out every couple years, the state goes out like every 3 years. It's kind of the way it is. Leasing programs aren't part of that. So I don't actually know how we would physically be able to do that. I have heard of leases. Previous to being here, I know that some other places have done it with smaller vehicles, with more like the traditional vehicles that you would lease, like a truck or things like that. I've seen it happen. And they're really not true leases, they're lease to owns. The company buys them and then it's basically like they're financing it for you because they really are lease to owns. They're not really true leases. They're more like a financing program, is the way it was explained to me, that basically at the end you buy it for $1. So they're just financing it for you. Again, we'd have to figure out what the procurement in and outs of that would be. And I'm not really sure that any of these large trucks, I'm sure they must have programs because I know they would probably do it, but it's really, like I said, it's really more like financing as opposed to leasing.
So we should investigate it then.
We definitely can investigate it when we're going to be purchasing a truck. We'd still be in the same position that we wouldn't be able to get it for 2 years. They're not sitting, there are no trucks, new trucks, sitting on anybody's lot that you can go and purchase.
Lease.
Lease or purchase.
We didn't investigate leasing yet, so we don't know that.
But leasing would be the same thing. There's a truck out there, and whether I lease it and pay you some
Correct.
payments and then hand it over back to you in a few years and have a perpetual lease because I need the truck all the time, or pay cash and drive.
You still have to have the truck available to lease.
Oh, sure.
Right now, there are no trucks available. I'm not talking a Ford F-150 here, I'm talking,
Oh, I know, I looked at it,
Okay,
and
yeah.
I looked at some of these. And I also looked, this is, as old as it may be age-wise, 58,000 on an engine, it's a new engine.
correct.
I looked at some just going through, messing around.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen these trucks with 209,000 miles on them and 180,000 miles.
oh, yeah,
and on,
and
and we have 58,000.
You don't put on the same type of miles as a truck that's even hauling all the time puts on. You gotta remember, our trucks work in a snowstorm, and they're working in the worst conditions, and they're ramped up and ready to go. They're not run every day. They're not used every day. It's not like it's a more of an emergency response type of vehicle.
And the hours, it lists the hours too, so even when it's idling, it's running.
Right.
But most of the work on those things, they're running most of the time probably in that 4-month period between November
Absolutely.
and March,
And-
which is when it's intense.
And again, it doesn't seem like it's a lot of miles, but plowing miles and pushing snow is not the same as even hauling. It's plowing, it's hauling at the same time, it's got a load in and it's trying to push at the same time. It's a little bit different than just hauling in good weather and hauling where you're going back and forth and it's getting up to speed and up to temperature, where a lot of times we're out when it's very cold, not the greatest conditions, long periods of time, and then it sits for a long period of time. Comes in and it does nothing, Unfortunately, it's just the manner of the trucks.
This is one of our mid-drop trucks, right? This is the one where the salt comes out in front of the rear wheel.
Actually, this is one of the backdrop.
It is one of the
Yeah.
backdrop ones, okay. I was just kind of curious what our experience is, because I remember
So-
when we went to the mid-drop trucks, it was a brand-new experiment for us, because the argument was that it would drop and give traction to the rear wheels.
Right, so, and
But you think that salt would eat away a lot more?
it
dropping
does
in
eat
the-
away a lot more because where it is in the mid-drop. We like them in certain situations. A mid-drop is very good for when you have hilly conditions. So certain routes have a lot more hilly than other routes, right? So if you have a hilly route and you're going up and down Dowdy and up and down Stallion Hill and you might want a mid-drop truck, right? So it has its point. Do we see additional corrosion on our mid-drop trucks? Absolutely. And I can tell you, I mean, we're gonna, eventually you're gonna hear my push that we need a DPW garage, much more outfitted than the one I have. We don't have a spot to properly wash our trucks. So it's very hard to say, how are we gonna keep them maintained and salt-free? We don't even have enough room to keep all of our trucks inside. Again, they go out in those storms, they're exposed to the salt closer than any of your vehicles, and that's basically what they're in all the time. And the new salt we are using is great, but it's great for treating roads and melting. It's not great for trucks, it's not great for cars, right? It is definitely affecting different things.
I would assume because we're eliminating sand, we're using that much more salt.
So the interesting thing about the whole sand salt, and there's a lot of science that they've actually shown behind it, is when we were mixing sand and salt together, we were actually using almost the same amount of salt. Because the sand actually decreases the effectiveness of the salt. And what you want on the road and what we try to aim for, and a lot of times when we talk about pre-treating, is you want to actually get the salt to melt so that it has a brine on the road. So you're actually using the properties of the salt to create that brine, which creates that surface tension to allow you to easily push this to plow, to make the plowing better. When you had the sand, what you used to see is down the middle of the road, you'd see, like even after, there'd be a path of sand and there'd be snow on top of it. That's because the sand would actually keep it like colder and not melt it and not allow that melting to happen. So although it gave it grit, which in some cases, sometimes we need that grit, like there are cases where we would have to go and put sand out. If we get an ice storm, you can't melt a thick layer of ice that easily without a really, really lot of salt. The idea is to salt so that you get enough so you get that brine, and then resalt so that you don't have ice creating. And it's really difficult to get all the timing of that sometimes right, and we physically can't always get it right. For whatever reason, it's freak storm, ice comes, too much water. When we've had these storms where it's been raining and then changed to snow and then changed to ice and nothing, we put it out there and we pray that it works, basically, and that it doesn't change over too quickly, so.
So so my question would be, how long do you think this truck's gonna last? Because I understand, I've got pretty good knowledge of,
Sure. I would say that putting this engine in was hopefully getting us another 5 years on this truck.
What's gonna
Without-
break down?
without large maintenance costs associated with it.
Well, right, so we're already, so you should, I'm not going to be perfectly, honest.
Just asking
Yeah,
you,
no,
you know.
so we already have put in our capital plan to replace the dump body on this truck at $38,000. So we're making a major investment in this truck that is 15 years old. I do think that we're going to have to start, if supply chain issues don't change, like you just heard me, I have a catch basin truck that I put in for last June. They are not giving me a date.
Are you talking about internationals, or you're talking about
I'm
the,
talking about everybody. It doesn't matter. I've talked to the MAC guys, I've talked to the international guys. The Kenworth guy actually kind of was like, well, I think I could get you one within a year. But that doesn't, that means I get the, that's great. I get the
You have the
cabin
money. You have
chassis.
the money to buy it, and it's just not available.
Right, I have a cabin chassis, but I don't have the upfitting, so they only give you when you buy the truck from Mack Kenbort, you buying that. And then I have to send it somewhere else, they all work
Oh, I
together.
understand. I understand
Right.
that. I
But
understand.
that's a year out. I mean,
Yeah.
our upfitters are telling
I'm
us
just concerned about with.
how long?
Well, I know somebody that works for the state, so they're same position that you're in, and they're running, their trucks start getting 15 years old.
Absolutely.
They're
on their way out.
Salt has, really, there's a lot of maintenance that goes along with it.
I 100% agree, and I think that we should have a program that we start replacing our trucks at 15 years. Not going to say you're not, but I can't wait for 2 years to not have a truck.
If you can extend this truck for another 4 to 5 years at $8,000 to $10,000 a year for that 4 or 5 year period, that's a good deal.
Well, I think it'll be more than that, because I think after year 2 or year 3, I think the maintenance costs.
Talking about
from
the
the-
engine.
You know,
But the scrap value of the truck will be higher because you have a new engine in it, so we'll get some money for the engine and not much for the rotted body.
Yeah, we could sell the engine.
So if you did have 2 years' time to do this, and
If I had 2 years, I wouldn't be
you
replacing
had
it.
money, and you were to go out and buy a replacement truck today,
Mm-hmm.
so let's assume you got a blank check from town meeting and you got
220 to 225,000.
That's the number I was looking for.
I mean, I don't have the quote, but I was,
Is that fully outfitted or just
that's
the
fully
base?
outfitted. It's about 150 to 160, depending on whose cabin chassis you get. And another 100 for
Whatever you're gonna put on it.
the body and the sander and the, yeah.
I still don't understand why you don't do a lease buy analysis. Not maybe yet you, but with the finance group, Barb or something doesn't look at it.
I will definitely ask the
4,000 miles a
question.
year is like, it's like renting I don't say trucks, but if you had rented a regular car, your personal car, usually the rule of thumb is 12,000 miles, and if it's below that, you could lease and be feasible. If it's above it, don't buy it and then just run it to the ground. I don't know trucks, but 4,000 miles, and now it's a major capital this, and then when it's gonna be only good for so many years. And I'm not talking about maybe this situation, we don't have time, get it. But going forward, capital expenditures, and
I
money
think-
is money, why wouldn't we investigate?
I think it's worth investigating. I think my biggest concern with it is how we actually legally do that procurement, and if there is a program that's already set up to do it.
And I would agree, we could look at it and get the answer to the question, but I don't think that applies in this situation. That applies if we were looking to purchase a new vehicle versus lease, then we'd also have to address typically, in your car example, it's cheaper for me to lease the car for 3 years at a lower rate than buying it, but at the end of 3 years, you either buy it out or you send it back. So that, you turn it in and you
Yeah.
constantly, and usually if you want to lease it, it's because you want to turn it in after 3 years versus run it for 15 or 20 and get every bit you can out of it. But that doesn't apply here because we're looking at a repair, and lease doesn't apply to the repair.
And honestly, our biggest issue is making sure that we have a truck available. I get that I only need it available in the next 2 months, and then I'm really good for probably in another 9 months, but it's crucial 2 months to be down a whole
And we're
truck.
not talking a mid-sized pickup truck here, we're talking a major piece of capital equipment. And the problem with leasing versus ownership is if the vehicle fails like it is right now, and we don't own it, we're at the mercy of whoever owns it, who's leasing it to us, to how quickly it's gonna be fixed, if at all, and when.
Right.
And that's, when you lose control of a major piece of capital equipment, because you don't own it, then you're at the mercy of the person that does own it. So I disagree with leasing large pieces of capital equipment.
I think we should do an
because you
analysis.
lose control of the situation. Analysis or not, you lose control of the property in that sense. It's not like you're renting a lease vehicle for a salesman, you're renting a
totally buy that.
$20,000 piece of equipment. So that's my feeling.
No, that's fair.
I'm not-
So is there and I'm okay with where you're going, and I appreciate the background that you're providing here, but let's assume the engine doesn't become available tomorrow if we were to go forward with this. Do you have an option of using one of your plowing subcontractors, or hiring somebody else out there who has a truck, who may not necessarily plow, but for the right reasonable price could step in for
But
the
we
next
could
one or two
rent-
storms?
So
To get you through the short term this season and give us time to figure out the
I
longer
mean,
term?
we would get through with the 5, 6 remaining trucks that we have. We will make do and hope, and knock on wood, and hope that we don't have anybody.
And where are you? I want to get out of the
Yeah,
driveway,
I
right?
know.
You're
And,
running
I
2 hours
mean,
behind?
we will definitely make do. I really hope we don't get any like 2-foot snowstorms or anything. I mean, it just means that we're gonna it just takes that much longer. Especially with plowing, it takes that much longer to get around. What we did last storm is we put one of our smaller trucks with it, which meant I was actually short a guy because of illness, so I actually had a truck. But literally, that means there's no spare truck. Something breaks down, nobody else, somebody's going home because there's no truck to put them in. We borrow trucks from the water and sewer department that have plows on them and say, yeah, when you come in to plow and clean out, we'll let you have one of your trucks back type of thing. Or they have one more. I mean, we will use every piece of equipment. I do have the option to put a plow on a backhoe if I have to, or and that would probably be the next piece of equipment I'd be pulling out.
You have a town grader, right?
We do have a town grader. We could, I mean, if we got.
Not exactly the best piece of solar
No,
equipment.
honestly, if we got a really large snowstorm, we would pull out the grader, because that's how you push back enough. So it would go on certain roads to push back. So we do have some more options. It's not like we're totally out. It just means that when we go out to salt, it's not the vehicle that we traditionally would have used. We do have options to do that. We have pieces of equipment to push snow. The route's going to take a little longer to salt.
So that we can get by probably didn't help your case here. So let's go back to, you're asking us for $50,000, $45,000.
But we can't wait for 2
To
years.
extend the life of a 15-year-old vehicle for about 5 years. And your short case for that is? This is other than.
We are going to get those storms that we really can't, and we're going to have another piece of equipment fail. And then we won't be around with 4, and there is nobody,
Covering a second contingency.
Yeah.
If one more piece fails, we're down to,
But even if you think of it this way, if we went to town meeting in June and gave it $250,000 for a new truck, and we didn't repair this, you're still 2 years out with them down a truck.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I do have one just stupid question. Is there such a thing as mutual aid for DPWs?
So the honest answer is yes, but you can't get mutual aid when everybody else is out plowing a snowstorm.
Yeah. No, I was just curious
I
if
mean,
it
so
existed.
it does exist, and I honestly don't know if we've adopted it here, because you actually have to adopt it, and you have to have those agreed mutual aid agreements in. And I know it's done. It had been done in a couple other places, because I know was a town 2 years ago that their whole garage burnt down, and another town basically was able to give them a vehicle and kind of do it. But we're not as good as the police and fire of you have the person right next to you all ready to go. But it's usually more on if something happened. Tornado,
Yeah.
Somebody needs to borrow an extra loader. Okay, yes, you can take my loader for 2 weeks type of things. It's usually more on that type of scale that you see those things enacted.
So, just to move this along, I'll note that, as of now, with the additional $50,000 that came at the special town meeting, our reserve fund balance is $148,301. So I'll make a motion that we approve the transfer of $45,000 from the reserve fund to the DPW, get the right account here, purchase services account for the purpose of repairing the truck engine in Unit 10.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I'd like to add to that motion that if the engine can come in a timely manner, of 2 weeks or 3 weeks and be back working. If it's gonna be 3 months or 4 months, I think we have a little bit more time to think about what we wanna do.
So provided a truck can be repaired and returned
If we don't need it by the end of March,
service,
I,
how many weeks do we want to give her? You know, give her within the next month?
I still don't see
well, I just
why.
think that if you had 6 months to come up with a truck, you might be able to come up with a used one that you'd have $45,000 to put down against it.
Yeah, but you might, but this is a sure.
I'm just,
I understand, but that's a might, this is a sure thing.
right.
But part of this was she wants to get a truck back on the road in 2 weeks here, right?
I understand,
So,
I understand.
I see where you're going.
Yeah, I just
If
think
we
that-
walk out of here, she calls tomorrow, and it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks down the road, we might want to go back and
Yeah,
see
you
what are
do-
the
and-
other options.
And you know, you're only talking one component of this. You're putting $38,000 onto a body of this truck.
that's in next year's capital.
That's in next year's capital, so you're already spending, you're up to what, 75,000 now?
225, yeah?
Yeah, so I mean, it looks like we're just putting a lot of money into a truck that's, I mean, I've seen them after 15 or 16 years, there's not much frame left to the things.
So this one's frame is actually not in bad shape.
Yeah,
We have
okay.
checked that out, because, I mean,
It's just at that, it's
one
just
of
at that
those-
point where
it
you.
is. I honestly agree. And if, I will say this, if I go back tomorrow and he tells me, no, that's on back order, and I'm not gonna have it for a month, I'll tell him, no, I don't want it. I'm okay with that. I really don't have a problem with that. What I want is the truck, and that was part of the thing. I wouldn't have come and asked for the money
Yeah.
if
I
I couldn't
understand.
have the truck back still in this winter season.
Get
If
to
it-
April, mid-April, we'll be okay.
if I can get a truck before this, back in my hands before this winter season, then
And the truck is already there.
the truck's already, it's already there, ready to, it's ready for me just to call and say, yes, you can go do it.
Right, so rather than add the provision to the motion, we'll leave it, I'll leave the motion with the understanding that if there is some delay, and you're not gonna get as quickly as you're hoping here, and that gives us more time to look at some other options, like call United Rentals and try to rent a truck for a period, lease a truck for a period of time, or rent it, whatever you need to do, to get you through whatever next period is, or, you know, you're at the end of the snow season, we'll take the chances with that. Well, the early April storms and the 2-foot storm, so we'll figure out what the options are. Come back and see us then, and we'll look at
Yep.
other options.
No,
He's like, no.
no, the motion is simply to transfer the $45,000 with no caps.
Right, but the understanding is if there's a delay in this versus what she's saying, I think Mike and maybe I are leaning towards, let's.
Are
I think
we,
it gives you a little bit more time to
are
really
you
think about it.
amending the motion to add that
I'm not.
requirement?
I'm just saying there's an understanding of where we are. I'm not amending the motion. She can spend the money.
Now, are you going to amend the motion then?
No, I'll rescind it.
Okay, so
Because I think I can,
So-
I think I understand, I think we have a pretty good understanding.
I understand where you're going, and if
And I think
if I am told tomorrow when we make that phone call that there's going to be some type of delay in getting that engine, because that was one of the selling points, then I am having a whole different conversation,
Yeah.
and we're looking for
That's-
different
that-
options.
That's decisions at your discretion.
discretion, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And she's
I'm
got
good.
$45,000 where if she takes it to another deal, another repair shop and get it done for that amount of money, or come up with something, you know, you've got some options. If you can't get it back, no matter what you look at, you know, don't place the engine, might be the, you know, maybe there's a longer term thing we can work out with a better, newer truck.
Yeah.
I understand your concerns.
I just,
don't want
I
to
mean,
handcuff anything.
I'm the kind of guy that would be calling up, I don't know if Camaradas is still in business, but I think they are. They would probably have a used engine, and I'd be having my guys put it in during the summertime. I'm paying them anyway. They're not that busy. Put the engine in it ourselves. I mean,
Then there's no warranty.
yeah, 5,000 hours or 6,000 hours on a motor. I'd almost be pulling that thing down here myself and trying to find out what caused the failure. Did the cam go? Did the lifter go? Did the rocker go? I mean, it seems to me that that's a,
So this is an engine that's known to have problems.
Right,
So they,
right, but I've-
none of them were very surprised when they were like, oh, this is,
it's
yeah.
probably a common problem with it, right? But I don't know if, I understand, but I know you have mechanics that could probably handle it.
I'd like to make a motion that we move the motion.
Well, no, we don't need to go that far, because then I have to have another vote. So, no, not seeing any further discussion.
Yes.
All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? So it's 7-1.
7,
So remember, the last neighborhood you plow is his.
he'll shovel snow for you. Don't, just give him a call.
Give him a shovel.
I had to do it, Ken.
Well, it's probably too tempting.
So today is 2/21.
I live on Fisk Hill Road.
I wish, you know?
What number so they can push all the snow in the end of your driveway?
I have enough problems with the town plows coming by my house.
We don't have that much, we have to plow our own.
Full opportunity when we plow, don't worry.
Oh, I know. I thought I was gonna lose another mailbox, but that's another story. So, just two, I mean, just some of you weren't able to make it, but we did have a very good meeting with Heather and Shane from Veolia, who took us around both the water treatment and the wastewater treatment, different facilities, not only just the plants, but some of the pumping stations. And we've got a good idea of some of the challenges they're facing in those two departments as well. So thank you for setting that up and
Yep,
devoting your
and
time for that.
as long as we don't have a quorum when we're doing it, I welcome anybody else who wants to come. I know Mary Darling from Select Board also wanted to come, so we can do it as long as we don't have a quorum, if anybody else wants to have tours of those facilities.
I would like to, at some point. I knew I was tied up that day.
Yeah.
I had COVID that day. I had COVID,
Oh, you did?
yes.
Oh, gee. I wonder
So
if
maybe I can just, I mean,
You can set up some dates, I can.
Yeah,
It was really actually quite interesting.
Yeah, I really missed out on it.
It's eye-opener, too.
But I'd like to see all the whole, because I'm your liaison
Yep.
now, so I'd like to see everything.
yep, and eventually we'll get you in to see the DPW too. It won't be quite as long of a tour, but it's not a very big building.
You gotta get like Southbridge where they buy the DB Cotton building.
Yeah, the old contamination and
Yeah, but you
have
could put,
more problems with that cleanup
Yeah,
than they do.
had
That's where I used to work.
I know,
It was a very nice building. It was
It's a
very
nice-
nice to be able to house all the equipment in one of.
Everything.
Everything. More than enough space for everything in there. And a very nice wash facility. It's very helpful, so.
The town ate a big mess.
well, that goes way back. That was a way
I
back.
remember that. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Heather.
Great, thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.
Is that your note on the table there, or is that somebody else's? The little white piece of paper in front of the
No,
microphone?
no, that's, do not touch the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Get in trouble.
okay.
Have a good night.
Thank
too,
you.
thank you.
So the next thing on our agenda is the minutes from January 4th, if I could get them to open.
Where are they?
They were sent out.
Get 'em. That's why I sent you an email asking if we were gonna get them.
I replied to the email attached to the minutes.
Yeah,
You attached the minutes to the email you sent me?
yeah,
I didn't see it.
6:35.
There you go.
That's the
It
old
was yesterday?
No, this is a different one. This is
You
from last
replied
week.
to my reply.
I know, but I thought you, I didn't know you attached it. I just thought you replied.
Yeah,
You replied that I had the wrong
and
date.
he CC'd everybody with it too.
You
Yeah.
replied to me and you said I had the wrong day of the week. I
Right.
didn't realize there was anything else in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my.
I got you all riled up with my reply. You didn't look at the important part of the
I made the same mistake Kevin did. I said the meeting was tomorrow night,
Yeah.
and when you sent out your...
Oh, I put it in the wrong month.
I know you did. Oh, that's right, the wrong month, you put
Oh,
January.
I was away then.
I put the wrong day of the week.
That's what I get cut and
I'd say-
testing my
You were
notices.
away.
I was away.
Okay.
Wait for me.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to read it too.
Oh, folks, it'd be nice to be able to approve them promptly here, but if people do need more time, we can always take them up in the next meeting.
They're actually not that complicated.
These are the minutes that you sent out,
It went out yesterday.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
officially.
January 4th, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the attachment.
I looked at them.
I didn't
Look
see
at 'em.
anything that stuck out, obvious.
I didn't see anything.
So I take it that Mr. McGlone is making a motion to approve the minutes as presented, and I'll second.
He
You got a
says he-
second, Larry? All
He
right,
says
Larry
he
will
was
second.
absent.
I was absent, but I listened in for a little bit, but
Oh, okay.
Oh, just a comment. Can I make a comment?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just a few, the decision on how free cash to have is made by the Board of Selectmen, not the Finance Committee. So I think when we started the free cash discussion, we were talking about curtailing it based on after our meeting with Barb, which we were planning on having.
Yep, well, it's actually.
I don't remember
with
that
the
being
fi-
said, that the selectmen, but anyway.
Well, they would set the policy. It's, we could offer information and feedback, but they would officially adopt it. But that meeting is going to be with the town administrator, and it still hasn't even begun to register on anybody's radar.
So I think maybe what you're saying, Ken, is the decision
Yeah.
how it's made by the Board of Selectmen.
Last point.
I think the minutes more clearly should say that the policy on how much free cash to have is set by the Board of Selectmen. Because if I look at the policy, I thought that was a joint policy between us and the Finance Committee, but as when I was reading these minutes and going back and looking at it, it is that.
When we were talking, what I brought up was, here's the policy, and if it's a wrong one, let me know. But it clearly says
So maybe,
3 to 7%. And then it goes on to say, together with stabilization fund, the 3 to 7% goal is a widely accepted measure of good financial standing and a factor of Sturbridge bond rating. Okay, so if we're gonna go to 16, all I'm saying is then either adhere to what we think is good standing to our bond rating, which we all are concerned about, obviously,
Right.
or in violation of it, or change it.
It needs to be changed, right.
So that's not,
So,
that wasn't reflected in in the minutes.
Larry, I'd like to.
That's what I'm
your
saying.
Longevity on this subject.
I'm sorry.
Your longevity on this subject, because you've been on this committee probably longer than anyone else, Larry. Is that a
Yeah, we're
written
pretty
policy about the, or is it a practice?
No, it's a written policy, he's got
It's
it,
written.
but it's way outdated.
That's what I'm saying, if this is outdated, give me another one, that's all I said.
There's a policy book.
Okay, but that's in that is the
Yeah,
policy.
sure. Yeah.
So we've been exceeding that established guideline for a considerable amount of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the question then becomes, I think,
well,
which is wrong? What the practice has been very healthily, if there's such a word,
so let's,
or does the written policy have to be updated to match reality and
I
success?
get that. I just wasn't sure if it was prescribed as.
It is.
so let me read it, right? It says, "The town will endeavor to maintain a combined balance of free cash and stabilization funds at 10 to 12% of its general fund." The next bullet says free cash at 3 to 7, and then stabilization at 7 to 9. We've been, so I would, agree that we've been keeping free cash in the high end, and we do have some stabilization funds, that are probably on the low end. So I think if you look at the combined balance, we're not that far out of whack what the policy says. We just overload the free cash. So an easy way around that is, you know, we can take up in the future when we discuss this, is instead of having all free cash, well, we're gonna have an article that moves free cash into a stabilization fund.
That's what
And
we've
then
been
when we
doing.
need to, you know, and instead of putting 100,000, you know, maybe we put 2 million in there this year. And then when we need to fund capital projects, new trucks, new whatever it is, we take out of the stabilization fund versus free cash. And that's
Yeah.
one
Well-
way to be more in compliance with.
Yes, it certainly is, and I would just piggyback on what you said. Whenever the policy is reviewed, it should be done with the criteria of the bond rating agencies in front of us, because they frankly don't give a damn. They just want to know how close it comes to what they call for.
There,
That's it.
So we keep going around and around because you got a lot of money in free cash. But we're not that far from the policy.
All right.
If we would just move money and park it in
Yeah.
a stabilization fund and then draw it out the
But-
next day to.
Depending on the criteria. If they see that as a shell game, then it ain't a good idea.
Or we get to the end of the
But
year, we
there's-
just spend it all down.
there's
and we
more
never-
practical concerns with that too, in that you less restricted with money from free cash than you are putting it into stabilization funds, because you're putting it into stabilization funds with purposes associated with them. And we already know, right, we've got this one outstanding project that, I don't know why it's taking so long, but that radio replacement project started out at, you know, $4 million. Last time we heard it was $6 million, and it still isn't done yet. You know, and so some of this money is gonna go to that, and as we were talking before the meeting tonight, there's already a capital proposal for a new fire vehicle for $1.4 million that the general consensus right now seems to be just, let's just buy it outright. Use the free cash and just purchase it,
And
so we don't have to borrow.
the other document to have in front of the committee, right next to the criteria of the bond rating agency, is a masterly letter from the finance director, which is referred to in these minutes. It is a primer. You want to know how things are done the right way? Read the letter.
And I don't think we would be in violation of the policy if we ended up, let's assume we had $20 million in free cash, and, you know, maybe that's 30% versus the 10 to 12%. Seems like we're out of whack. Well, we just kind of kept it there and said, we got money in the bank, we're good. Maybe we're outside of the policy. But if we sat there and said, we got a town meeting coming up, we're gonna spend the free cash down, and then after those articles, we're left with something that's within the guidelines, we're still in compliance with the intent of what's in there.
The criteria. And these are people who have no sense of humor. Not at all. They'll move on to the next town and do the same thing to them.
So
They're tough.
we lapsed into a discussion on free cash again, but I think the issue was the way that topic was discussed about the Board of Selectmen setting it. I think that thing should, based on discussion, say the town's fiscal policy, which states how much free cash should be there, is set by the Board of Selectmen. Is a more accurate, I think, description of what should be in minutes.
I'd just point out, it's just a coincidence, that several members of this committee have served sometimes together, sometimes separately over the years on the finance, investment, and audit committees of a major healthcare nonprofit in this area. And when it came to, for example, number of days cash on hand, well, you remember, let's say the policy was 111 days, and we're sitting there with, we at the time, with 134 days. Nobody gets acne. It's going to work out. We understand. Come in at 94 days, now you've got something to worry about. And there are at least 1, 2, 3, 4, at least, who have served in that capacity. And that budget was big.
So we can either have a joint meeting to discuss the policy and figure out where it goes, or we can have, you know, prior to budget season kicking in and getting tied up in the policy discussions as we're reviewing articles and budgets, have our own meeting to kind of go through this once more. either agree with what we have, feel that there's
Larry started in
a
2003.
recommendation for some changes that we can agree on to offer up to the selectmen and go from there, so.
And a rationale
Yeah, we'll see
why.
if you can get a meeting scheduled before.
Always
budget.
why. Here are the consequences if you do it, and if you don't do it, here are the consequences. And it's not room for a good guy to win the smiles and approval of the voters. It's for the voters' own good.
Of course, it's their money. Said quite simply.
Well, of course it is. We're only stewards.
Perfect, yep, I agree.
But it's not to win their favor,
No,
unless you're running for office.
Yeah. All right,
Great.
so we have, I guess, made some amendments to the minutes.
Yeah, it's just that one amendment, unless anybody else has got something else.
No. All right, so let's go back to, does someone want to move the minutes as amended? Larry?
Move the adoption of the minutes as amended.
Yep, I'll second.
Mike, myself, and Kathy were not there. One, two, there's only 5 of you who can vote.
All right, all those in favor of the amended minutes? So there's 5. 5 to 0 to 3. All right, so the only other piece of news is budget season is approaching. and-
quickly.
Well, not as quickly as I would like, but what I'm what I'm hearing is maybe mid-March we'll have a package, maybe. It might even be later.
Woo.
So we'll see how we end up, but can't do anything about that right now. As I know more details, I will
That'll be
keep you
like
on
the
the
old
phone.
days. We were sitting upstairs in the then
Senior
senior
center,
center, 2 in the morning, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I have a question.
No Saturday session, right?
As the last I had heard, no. They were planning on doing a joint session at a planning board meeting like they had in the past. Oh, select board, I'm sorry, thank you. Yes, but I haven't heard officially that that's gonna happen. And tomorrow I have a capital planning meeting, so maybe I'll get some more details there.
So it's my understanding that the room at the center office building that required Concom to meet here, that's been corrected and they have, it's operational now, so they don't
Yes.
have to meet here unless they have an overflow crowd. So will we be able to resume meeting twice a week during budget season?
We could.
We were meeting
Yeah,
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah, for a few years we did that, yep.
Well, for
Long time,
a
really.
long time we did that. I found that to be very productive, to tell you the truth.
I'll find out more when I know the time schedule.
Okay.
You know, when I get the book delivered, kind of says, here's where we can start. And, you know, and you gotta work backwards because you have an exact deadline. You know it's the first Monday in June is the annual town meeting, so you know 2 weeks before that, we have to have our report done, and then you just fill it all in.
And also, none of the new prescribed parameters as far as what we have to post for an agenda. We're at the mercy of the Board of Selectmen since they only meet every other week, one night every other week. So whatever they do will impact what we have to do, and will handicap us in a way, I think.
I think it's going to, but I have to figure out a way to work around
Yeah,
it.
we do. You have to
And-
expect the worst and prepare for it.
So I would suggest that, contrary to how we've done this in the past, we might have to come into this budget season and saying on, first Tuesday, if we're doing 2 nights a week, first Tuesday in April, here, you'll have to assign a department or several departments to a particular night. The liaison in that department will need to be ready to go. There is nothing wrong with saying we're gonna do police department on, pick a date, April 6th. April 6th comes and we're not ready, we can just say, sorry, we'll have to, you can't have discussion tonight, we're waiting for some more information, we're gonna pick it up, pick another date. What you can't do is, we have nothing on here, let's take out the fire department, because we didn't tell people we're talking about, such and such a department. So it almost sounds like you're gonna have to just look at a calendar. If we're meeting Tuesdays and Thursdays, put departments against each one of those, and then leave the warrant articles towards the end of April in there, and see where.
I need a warrant, though. See, I need them to at least put a bare bones 4-article warrant that says the town budget is Article 4. So I can say, we are discussing Article 4, town budget, and then I can highlight, these are departments we're discussing. But if I don't have the article number, then there's nothing to act on, because there isn't a warrant to act on.
But there's departmental budgets.
But-
You can say we're talking about the budgets for the first 3 to 4 weeks and then name the department.
Technically, it's a warrant article. The budget, town budget is a warrant article. It needs to be on a warrant and posted on a warrant. So they're gonna need to at least open a warrant, put Article 1 on there called town budget, and close it, and then we can act on Article 1.
Discuss on the budget, yeah.
The budget doesn't live outside of the warrant. It's not a separate animal.
Being that we're responsible for the budget, you know, our steward of the budget.
We're responsible for making recommendations on all of the town meeting warrant.
Yeah, I knew we had some, obviously, but, well, smart people in this room. Do we have any inkling of what we would anticipate? 2.5%, 3%, 4%? Some towns actually give.
They're still working
They give
on the
directions,
budget
say,
as we
it'll be
speak.
2.5%, and you guys figure it out. That's one, some towns do that. We tend to get it in, and then we look at it, and I don't know which is right, I mean, I don't know what the concept of what we think and what we expect, or,
Well, that would be discussion for like the budget night, where we come up with, here's what you have for, you know, new growth and revenues and, you know, and the departments kind of build up their budget and say, we need $39 million this year to do all the things that we say are in this book. And we tend to do it from a bottoms up. We look at the departments, we look at the articles, yeah, that makes sense, okay, that's the number we need to spend. The other approach is to go, well, you're saying we could approach it from, you know, we only want the budget, overall, you know, budget to go up X dollars. Here's how much we think should go to the schools and how much to the town, and then kind of let them go from there. But that's a broad discussion at that initial budget meeting. To
But
figure out how we want to do it.
Mike, you're right. We do zero-based. That's what we do. We start and see how it turns out and adjust. The other way, you know, 2%, 3.5%, has an unprovable assumption. And that assumption, which cannot be proved, is that the next year will be just like the prior year's budget, only 2.5% more. Impossible to prove. You won't know until the 367th day. So, zero-based, here we go. And don't forget, a large percentage of the budget is mandated by the state, particularly the nearly 50% that is education. You cannot have a school district. You'll go into receivership, like Southbridge, if you don't spend certain monies, certain amounts, for certain things. Otherwise, you degrade and they take over. And that's not debatable at the local level. So picking a percentage, and it'd be very interesting to see the basis of calculation for 2.5 against 3.72. Unprovable.
The other side of that is you do the zero-based, the bottoms up, you get to a number and say, yeah, all this makes sense, and the revenue projections we get from Barbara, it says, well, you can spend $39 million this year between revenues that they forecast and whatever else. And we tend to build a budget that gets real close every year, right to that number. You know, we can always,
Lately we have.
we can always do the other step of saying, yeah, we can spend that amount of money based on those revenues, but, you know, should we dial it back $1, $100 or something else? Even though I can spend up to that level, you know, is there some slightly less number that makes sense? Whether, I don't know, we're gonna add keep a little more free cash or stabilization funds in there, or, you know, we could tax this up to this level, but let's stay a little bit behind it.
There's sunsetting legislation sometimes, and all of a sudden, now you gotta pay for what you used to get as revenue. Now it's outflow.
Never mind sunset programs like Safer Grants.
Yep.
I think the top bottom up, top down is the right approach. But if I look at the last 5 years' budget, and I'm not the historian here, obviously, what they came in with, everyone, and what was ultimately agreed to here is pretty much identical. I don't see any changes. If they said 39, 39, they said 40, 40, they said 37, 37. There doesn't seem to be a lot of,
Shows you how good they are.
it could be very good,
Well, they
or
are.
we're not pushing back hard enough. I don't know.
Remember,
Well,
we
there's,
give recommendations, we don't boss anybody.
there's a difference too. I mean, yeah, we don't make the budget, we see if it's, but the people concerned about the tax impacts on the members of the community are your elected representatives. Someone's going to actually look out for the welfare of the town. The town, absent all the component people who make it up. Because the town needs to live and breathe and continue on without withering away.
Sure.
And so,
You gotta invest in the future and everything else, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the budget, it comes from the finance director and the town administrator, and it goes to the selectmen. If the selectmen want to take your advice, they can. But this committee doesn't
Well-
have that role.
we've done it in the past though, it's not that we haven't, but it's very rare. Because you were here too that one time, I think they came in 3-point-something% COLA, and we went with 2.5, and we fought it out
I remember that.
on the town meeting floor with the lower COLA.
Yes, I remember that.
But that's very rare.
So our approaches of, I
Name
think,
another one.
the Board of Selectmen, town administrator and staff, they're responsible for running town on a day-to-day basis, not us on the finance committee. Right, so this is what they want to do in their elected roles to run the town. Here's our plan, here's how much money it's gonna take to get. So I think our role is, okay, if you want to spend that much money, what's the right way to fund it? How much comes from raise and appropriate? How much comes from free cash? How much comes from borrowing? Do we have the right sources to fund that? But we also have a role here of kind of, being that independent eye as to what's in there. So it's like, you may want to run all this, but maybe that's too much money to spend next year. We got to dial the top number back somehow. Or
Right.
this expenditure, this one just doesn't seem to make fiscal sense,
and we
not
show that
necessary,
in our
day-to-day
text
sense,
boxes,
whatever.
which are the recommendation.
And that's where the recommendation
Well,
comes.
And I think a
We
big
have
part,
no enforcement. We have no staff except the best recording secretary. I mean, we are not an operating entity.
but I look at our position,
Oh, yeah,
Larry,
I know-
we're asking questions on behalf of the public, when we have different people in front of us. We may understand why they're doing it, but a lot of times I'll ask a question that to me, it's already self-evident, but I'm acting on on behalf of the person that's watching on TV or sitting over there, so that they can explain why they're doing what they're doing. And if it's a good explanation, everybody goes home happy.
You're
And if
performing
it's
a
not
service.
And if it's not a good explanation, they should be getting phone calls, whoever's giving us that, from everyone who's watching on television,
Right.
if they bother to watch. I mean, on the website.
Well,
you're
that
performing
goes
a
back to,
service.
my belief
The
is you should
Inquisition.
be able to explain any expenditure the town makes
Absolutely.
to
Yes.
this committee, and why it made it.
That's right.
The checks and balances, and intrinsically, just by us being here, is a check. I mean, they know we're looking at it, so probably when they go to do the budget, they realize someone's gonna look at it and make some sense out of it. So intrinsically, we have, more power, I guess, from the perspective
Well,
of
we have the power to
control.
expose
Yeah.
whether or not something's justified. If it's not justified, at least we can expose it with our questions, and then it's up to who's ever
Yes.
sees what's happening,
It's
to
up
put
to
the
the town
pressure
meeting
on the selectmen or whoever else.
Our power
To
is a
change.
mirage. The people have the power.
Right.
And we represent the people, right?
No, we're not elected. We don't represent anybody.
We just
Right.
publicize what's going on.
We try to,
The elected moderator
Yeah.
answers to the public. We're not operating. We're not politicians.
Oh, I know that.
Well, then.
We can't have
that's a
10,000 people in
surprise.
this room looking at this, at the budget and for a new truck. So they basically respect us to say, this committee will represent the people, making sure we make the right decisions for the people, since we can't have 10,000 people
We
in this
do their
room.
legwork.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do their legwork.
And I'll pat us on
We
the
don't
back a little
poll
bit.
them to find out what they want.
Oh, no, of course not. I don't, yeah.
No.
We had a woman
I
come
just
and
want to
talk
make
to
good
us.
decisions, that's all.
We had a woman who was recently moved here come to talk to us last year, and she sat right
Yeah.
there and wanted to know. And
Yes.
she approached me during that town meeting, and she approached me during the special town meeting that we just had, and thanked this committee on her behalf. She said to me, "Thank you, you guys are getting the answers to the questions I have." She's paying attention because she's a taxpayer.
good
She
for
wants
her,
to-
she should.
Right, but she's,
Yeah.
at
Maybe
least she
there'll be
appreciates that
10,000 of them.
we're the ones asking the questions to get that out there.
Yeah. That's nice.
That's
to hear.
all- that's
Their
our job.
legwork, we're not representing them.
Right, right.
They didn't designate us. Who the hell are we?
We're just putting the information out there.
Right?
Would you like a motion to adjourn at 8
Sure,
PM?
Michael, go ahead.
Second.
Larry, at 8 PM, any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed, there's 8-0. Great.
I'll just point to, the meeting's over, so this is just an aside, but Kevin wasn't aware of it when he just saw it on my iPad. Next Friday is Becky Gendron's last day. Our Conservation Commission, our agent has resigned. She's leaving, and she's going to work for DEP.
Going for the state.